and welcome back to Storytime with One Big Hoax. Today we're going to tell a story that begins with a name and then loses it for 12 long years. A story of a young woman who was a loving mother and a free spirit, but whose life ended in a desolate landscape near the Great Salt Lake. We're talking about the unsolved murder of Nikki Bakoles, a case that gave a victim a name, but still hasn't given her justice. Nikole is a 19-year-old mother. Family members described her as a creative, free spirit, someone who loved poetry and painting. In 1998, she moved to Utah with her boyfriend, Joel Shadoin, and they had a daughter together. But life had been difficult. They lost custody of the child, and according to court records, Nikole was facing legal issues related to drug use and shoplifting. In addition, it's reported that she was being evicted from her apartment. Nikole was last seen in March of 2000 after an argument with her boyfriend. He claimed he left and never saw her again. Her family hadn't reported her missing right away, a sad reality of the circumstances. Communication had been infrequent, and they thought she might have just needed some space to sort her life out. They filed the report 3 years later, in 2003, having not heard from her in so long. In the meantime, on October 8th of 2000, two duck hunters found the remains of a blonde-haired woman just outside of the Saltaire concert venue. From then, the unidentified woman was dubbed Saltaire Sally, and so she was for nearly 12 years. Investigators found her hair and her skull along with 26 bones that were scattered about, most likely the result of wild animals scavenging. There were also a few clothing items found. As you can imagine, this made identification difficult. Back then, DNA evidence wasn't able to be analyzed the way it is in modern day. For 12 years, Salter Sally was an unknown. Her remains were part of a cold case. The only clues were the items found with her and a scientific analysis of her hair and bones, which suggested she had spent time in both Utah and the Pacific Northwest. Police released a sketch, but no one came forward to identify her. The break in the case came in 2012 thanks to advancements in DNA technology. Investigators were able to match DNA from the remains to a sample provided by a family in Washington state who had filed a missing persons report back in 2003. Saltaire Sally finally had her name back. She was Nikole Christina Bakoles. With her identity confirmed, the cold case was reopened as an unsolved homicide. The cause of death was not publicly released, but the state of her remains and the fact that she was left in a remote field made it clear that this was no accident. The boyfriend, Joel Shadoin, was questioned again. He had since been incarcerated in Washington for unrelated charges. He remained the last person to have seen her alive, but he has never been named as a suspect. An anonymous caller claimed to have murdered Nikole, but the call was untraceable. Though law enforcement officials have identified Nikki, they have not discussed the circumstances surrounding her death, as this is an unsolved case. Today, the case of Nikole Bakoles remains a puzzle. The details are sparse, and the truth is buried under decades of time and the vast, unforgiving landscape where she was found. Who was responsible for her death? Was it a crime of passion, or did her troubled circumstances lead her to cross paths with dangerous strangers? The Unified Police Department of Greater Salt Lake still considers this an active investigation. They have a cold case unit dedicated to finding the person who took Nikole's life. Nikole Bakoles was more than just Saltaire Sally. She was a daughter, a mother, and an artist. She deserves to have her story told and her killer brought to justice. If you have any information about the death of Nikole Bakoles, no matter how insignificant it may seem, please contact the Unified Police Department's Cold Case Unit. Their number to call is 385-468-9816. Again, 385-468-9816. Your tip could be the one that finally solves this decade-old mystery. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Storytime with One Big Hoax. I hope you'll join me again. Bye-bye.